All right, we're back today with another podcast episode, and I got my trusty phone here because I'm reading some notes. I'm doing the intro. We are with Dr. Ashley Blackington, and I'm going to talk about her for a second. But I am really leaning in to kind of like the unlearning of this martyrdom, this victim energy that women hold with this modern, they call it the invisible mother load. The reason why I want to bring this up specifically about today's episode is because Ashley and I talk about, the caregiver load and all of that. And she has an amazing network and app, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm raising 3 boys. And what I have noticed is it is not culturally acceptable for men in general to talk about their invisible load. And I think women as a culture, like we're used to expressing ourselves and being, they say, more emotional, but we are more nurturers and we communicate differently. And what I have observed in myself, my clients, the women around me is every human, regardless of gender, is carrying an invisible load. Like every single human that you meet is carrying an invisible load. And I do think culturally, it is more acceptable for women to talk about the invisible load that they carry. That said, I also think it is the responsibility of the individual to openly talk about their invisible load, but also actively change their own behavior to lessen that invisible load. And that discernment, that radical responsibility is what I call the emotionally uncomfortable journey. We will say, I don't have support, but it's the self-fulfilling prophecy that we will refuse to find support to keep that story. And so that's what I want you to think about going into today's conversation is yes, and there is an invisible load that women carry, but every human that you meet is carrying an invisible load. And so when you ask yourself, what stories am I telling myself about this invisible load and responsibility that I'm carrying? Where am I not taking action to get the support that I need? Because I'm uncomfortable, because I'm scared, because I don't feel worthy of receiving help. So that is just my 2 cents of this conversation. And what I love about this episode is called The Conversations You're Avoiding Are Draining You with Dr. Ashley Blackington. And Dr. Ashley Blackington is the founder and the CEO of Dovetail. It's a family CRM to help family caregivers manage the logistics of care. Dovetail was inspired by her time as a clinician and seeing the impact on family caregiving, trying to navigate without the tools to simplify the process. She was recently named Aurora's Tech Awards top 120 global female founders to watch in 2024. She's also the host of the podcast that's called And Both podcast, available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And her show is really cool because it features conversations. I was on it, features conversations with women raising children, honoring themselves as individuals alongside motherhood. She's the mom of 4, lover of hot coffee, and is working on her forthcoming book. So Ashley and I talk about why emotional intelligence communication is a required life skill, how martyrdom culture keeps women stuck in burnout, and the mindset shift that helped Ashley reclaim her time and her energy. So if you are tired of carrying the invisible mental load and ready to lean in to life differently, this conversation is for you. And as always, take a screenshot, tag me at Heather Chauvin on Instagram, share this link with a woman that you know would gain value from the podcast. And that's it. We're here to change the conversation for women and help you become more well-resourced. So let's dive in.
I think I realized that I maybe did not fit so neatly into the healthcare setting. With this experience that I had when I was a student, when I was in grad school, we have all these internships that we have to do in OT school to see all the different sort of areas that we can work in. And one of them was a big hospital in Boston, and it was on like a general medicine floor, and we had it was really fascinating medically, and all of those pieces. It was really fascinating because you're learning a lot of things. There's people that come from a lot of different places, and they have some of the diagnoses are just incredible. But I remember there was a husband and wife, and he came in. He was this enormous man, like just, like 6.5 feet tall, this big firefighter. And he had this wife who was like so friendly, and the two of them were, I call them penguin people, because they came to America from Europe together, and like they were each other's person, and they had built a life here. Anyways, and he came in, and he was really sick. And he was there for a little while and got better and went home. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh, this is so great. It's so wonderful. And then unfortunately came back rather quickly. And I remember when he came back, he was worse off than when he had originally left. And at one point during his stay, he actually coded. And what happens in a hospital is when they call a code, everyone runs towards that room, right? And that's what's supposed to happen, and that's what people are trained to do, and all of those things. And as an occupational therapist, I'm not on the code team. I'm not going in there. And you want to be helpful. And my first thought in all of this was, what about his wife? Who's with her? So when this person is having all of these things happen, there's carts flying in there, and there's stuff going everywhere, and people are trying to save this man's life. And I remember thinking, where is she? Because she was always there with him. And I went looking around the floor of the hospital, and I found her. She was standing by the window at the end of the hallway, and she was all by herself. And I said, are you okay? Which, I mean, clearly no, right? But what do you say? And I said, are you okay? And it was just this moment of like, yes, this is happening to him medically. This is happening to him emotionally, physically, all of those pieces. But these people are so connected, and this person, this is her person, and doesn't know what to do, and she is alone right now. I mean, physically she is alone. She has family and all of that, but she is alone. And so it was this indication for me that, like, yes, I like what I do, and yes, I love the patients, and or the experience, and all of that is really it's incredible. But I also recognize that there is a ripple effect in care, and there's a ripple effect in care where that may not always have been. This was 15 years ago. That was not the focus. The focus is saving this person's life. But the impact of that experience for him is going to impact her. And how do we take care of that? And how do we recognize that? And how do we move forward? Because caregiving is not an overnight thing. If you're a parent, a caregiver, whatever it is, it's not an overnight thing. And so that really started maybe those little sparkles along the way of how can the impact be in developing programs and developing things, and moving forward and having these conversations. How can we start to pull caregivers in more? And that I took that all the way through my professional inpatient work.
Thank you. There was a few things coming up for me as you were telling that story. One was, it reminded me back in the day when I was a social worker, and I felt like I was always asking different questions than everyone else in the room. I was like, guys, why are we labeling these behaviors? This child is trying to tell us something. And I felt alone in that, but also being able to step back. But hearing you say this, and that was almost, for me, that was almost like 15 years ago. And I'm like, this is the calling. This is when when you see something different, or you have a different direction that you're like soul is taking you in, or you see something different. It's like that is the calling in your life's work. And so that was the first thing. The second thing was what I told you before we hit record, was when I was in the hospital getting treatment for cancer, and my husband would come in, and I've said this publicly before, so, and I'm not, sometimes I'm throwing him under the bus, but I'm really not, because we've grown so much together. And you don't know what you don't know until it happens, right? These situations happen in life. But I just remember um, the caregiving, right? The team and village that was needed, community around me, but also all the like connections that I had with people, with my kids, with everyone else, not realizing what I was actually carrying. And I would see him sitting there, just full body shut down. And the full body shutdown was actually a burden to me, because I was like, I need you to show up. I need you to show up. I need you to know how to manage this. I need you to get your shit together. And the social worker would come in the room, and I would direct her to him. And I thought, wow, this is so fucked up, because everyone is focused on me. And that's great. You know, we're checking the medical boxes and the emotional boxes. I had more tools than he did, but I was like, nobody is supporting this man, this caregiver.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's the basis of all of this, right? Is that people, it's the squeaky wheel, not in a sort of, I don't know, whatever, in the positive way, the
Yeah.
squeaky wheel, the person who needs the care, the person who needs all of this intervention, that's where the focus goes. But at the end of that, or throughout that process, like you said, you had 3 little kids, so you in that process are not able to do all the things that you want to do, but you're always thinking about what about these kids, and what's going on. And in order for you to be able to focus on healing, and focus on getting better, and focus on what's the next step, and what do I need to prepare for,
Mm.
that has to be taken care of. And that can't be taken care of if you're watching, completely frayed edges stand there next to you going, no, 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 I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. um and it's like that, it's that piece, like it's just it becomes another thing to add to your list. And
Yeah.
I've heard this so many times from people: just take care of this person, just take care of, make sure that this person is okay, and stuff like that, to the point where you end up going in, and you're working with somebody, and they're doing something that you don't need to be hands on for, and you're saying to the person, like, I'm here for 45 minutes, or I'm here for an hour, and I'm working with this person. Do you want to go get something to eat, or do you want to go outside, or do you want to do whatever? And it's not necessarily to say, hey, go away, but it's like, I got it. I'm going to step in here for a time, and you don't need to be here.
Mhm.
So why don't you go do something for you? Why don't you go for a walk? Why don't you, go get a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
whatever it is that you need to do.
Yeah. So tell us more about like your career journey and kind of where it took you after that, and how I call them the breadcrumbs, how you kept like following the breadcrumbs, and what you're up to today.
Yeah. So from the hospital, I went, and I, got one of those regular OT jobs. I worked in acute rehab for, I don't know, over 10 years. And it was great. I graduated, I got a job, I bought a house, I did the things, right? Like, again, checking boxes. And then I got pregnant with my first baby, and the thoughts were along those lines, like, how is this all going to make sense in terms of childcare? Like, everything, all of this stuff is connected, right? So how is this going to make sense childcare wise, and work hours wise, and all of those pieces? And realize that the cost and availability of childcare where I live is not ideal. And I don't know where it is, but it's not here. And so at that point, I decided to step back from a full-time position, and my husband and I did sort of an offsetting schedule piece. And I thought that it was great because, we made it work. And then I got pregnant again with my second child. And it was like, do I want to be doing this forever where we're ships passing in the night? Our family was not doing things as families. You know, my husband had the kids all weekend and I was home during the week, but really it was a lot of like hot potato in all of that. And I thought, if I had to do something for myself, because I fundamentally believe that entrepreneurship was always the intended goal, whether or not I wanted it or not. I guess that's more of the calling and less of the like process of elimination.
Yeah.
Um, I do not like to work for people, especially if you're in a big system where you can't affect change. You know, in a big like hospital setting where you say, "What about the caregiver?" and people say, "What about the billable hours?" You're like, "I don't. This stuff doesn't align." And so I actually,
I think you kind of lost it in the system the second you were like thinking outside the box and
yeah.
you begin to understand, oh gosh, that's why I struggled in school, because I questioned everything. That was my challenge of,
Mm-hmm.
why do we have to do that? Couldn't you do it this way? This actually makes it easier. Heather, sit down, do what I told you to do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my personality. I was always supposed to be an entrepreneur and work for myself.
Mm-hmm. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I became an occupational therapist. I shadowed PT and speech and all of the different allied health and medicine and all of that stuff. And OT was the one where they said the goals that you are working on are the goals of the client or patient that you're working with. And I was like, oh, I can get behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is your biggest fundamental problem and how can I help you with that? That is my jam. Not, you have to be able to walk up the stairs.
Yeah.
You don't even have stairs in your house, but you have to be able to walk up the stairs so I can like bill for this.
Yeah.
But anyways, I started a proactive consulting company when I had, after my first son was born, and I helped people. I went into people's homes and I helped people plan for aging in place. So people that were doing work on their house that wanted to stay there forever and ever. Let's think about, if you're spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this, let's set up your house in a way that makes the most amount of sense for a long-term strategy. Or people that were newly diagnosed with a long-term, like a progressive neurological condition. And so that was really fascinating because everyone is different. And what I found in that second big breadcrumb / bag of bread in this was that
Bag of bread. That's a good one. I've never heard that yet. I like this.
was that I was facilitating the conversation between parents and adult children about aging and about autonomy and about, dignity and choice. That was, I would say, 85% of what I was doing. It wasn't like, here's where grab bars could go so that it would make sense for these people to do this. It was, at what point are you going to feel like, I don't want to do this anymore? This is too much help. This is too much of an ask. This is too much whatever. How do we have the conversation that nobody wants to have? Because, like, spoiler alert, no one gets out of life alive, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're all going towards the same ending, and it's unavoidable. But we can't continue to avoid the conversation just because it's uncomfortable. And so much of what I did was facilitate that. It was facilitate for older adults who want to be able to say, I am okay with asking for help when it comes to this, this, and this. But if I need this, then I'm not. Then I don't want to be here, or I'm ready to move on to the next place. But I also had these conversations because what I heard clinically, like I've seen so many times, people don't have these conversations, and the fallout from that is that that person is now not able to speak for themselves. And now you have multiple people who are weighing in, who are all fundamentally trying to make the best decisions given what they believe that they know. And that is an incredible amount of stress, but also that's what leads to these long-term, that's a generational impact on families. If you don't have these conversations, 2 people, 3 people are trying to make a decision about where mom needs to be and what is okay for mom, because mom never talked about it. And now one sibling says you did the wrong thing and the other sibling says I did the right thing. And now every Christmas is ruined
Yeah.
from there on out.
You know what's interesting is I always find myself saying this in every, you know what's interesting? I'm like annoyed that I say that. But I it's that saying of how you do one thing's how you do everything. When I started the work that I do, it was so parent child focused, and then as it's evolved, it's been over a decade. I'm like, okay, you're doing the same thing in with team. Like if you're managing teams. Now that my mother lives with us, she has her own space. I'm an only child, and I'm really starting to feel the sandwich generation. Um it's looking at this, it's like having emotionally uncomfortable conversations is a life skill. It's essential. I don't know how people go through life not developing emotional intelligence or avoiding emotion like all the time. I'm like, listen, you're ruining everything if you can't just, I call it be the buffalo. You can't just run towards what's uncomfortable because this week alone, my mother had surgery, my oldest son had surgery. And months ago, I was like, listen, this is where I know I'm going to like have a huge energy leak. Oh no, I'll be fine, Heather. You don't need to worry about me. And I flat out looked her dead in the eyes with my humorous little sparks. And I was like, you're going to be a burden if shit doesn't get in place. And she was like, she laughed about it. She's like, I can't believe you just said that. And I was like, you're not a burden to me, but I'm telling you, we need additional support in place because I can already see the train wreck coming if this doesn't happen. And I'm like, here you are just getting an outpatient surgery. This is what my future is going to be like in 10, 20, 30 years. And if we don't have this conversation now, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So, what did you notice like after that season and period in your career having these conversations? Then where did it take you next?
Next was so I did that, and then along the way too, we only create the solutions to our own problems. Is that at that point in time I was self-employed, my husband was self-employed, we had 2 kids, and the like scheduling sort of home management, like how my house was functioning, was all jacked up. Like you flip the calendar and the whole thing looks like someone took a paintball gun to it. It just like there's no amount of all of that can happen. So next up on the list, as I'm doing this, was to create this system. And it was all paper-based, and I created that and I launched that and coincidentally launched that right into the pandemic when everyone was home. So that was great because there was a lot of people that were looking for these strategies, and that was sort of a means to an end. It was like sort of related but not related. But I sort of always kept coming back to like the logistics of having children, like what you're saying about teams and having children. It's the same thing, right? So like the logistics of having kids, appointments and schedules and things that you have to do and supplies and all of that stuff is the exact same in a different same zoo, different animal, with aging adults or people that need long-term caregiving. And the people that were I was trying to develop something that would move from the paper-based, we're all in our homes, out into a digital space because our world is very digital. And thinking about, if I'm looking at this as a parent and I have this experience with caregivers, adult caregivers, and people, because all of my clinical work was with adults and usually older adults. So how is it possible that somebody could benefit from technology or use technology and all of the things that are coming online to simplify a lot of these processes? I mean, we're sending cameras out to like deep space, but we're still going through, like, we're still selling Post-its, like, 600 at a time. It boggles my mind. It totally boggles my mind, because what happens with that is that just takes up so much bandwidth to make sure that this is checked and this is taken care of and this and this and this. And I'm like, there is an easier way. There is legitimately an easier way. It exists. It's here. It's now a part of our everyday lives, whether we want it to be or not. I mean, AI has shoehorned its way in, and all of the digital space. And so I thought, let's create a platform that is specific for caregiving. And I didn't want it to be parents, and I didn't want it to just be caregiving. It in terms of like older adult caregiving, it is, let's create a platform that anyone can use. And a lot of this stuff, these conversations have come up over the years, the equity at home and equity in parenting and roles and tasks and things like that. A lot of that is hindered by communication. So if we have a collaborative space that focuses on communication, that focuses on clearly being able to define and say, these are the things that need to get done, and to be able to communicate among members of the team, aka family, won't that work towards this end goal? That, I mean, if you open up social media, that's everywhere, right? People want equity. People want someone to help share the load, the mental load, the physical load, the emotional load, all of that. So let's actually make the product and the platform that people need in order to move forward in that direction.
Okay. I want to play devil's advocate a little bit. It's the rebel in me.
Advocate away.
I find we create these solutions and then we still say, but I can't get rid of the load. No one is here to help me. Like this, I'm going to call it victim consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a huge mountain to climb. Mm-hmm. And there's been multiple times in my life where I'm like there was actually a moment, I talked about this in my book, Dying to Be a Good Mother, where I consciously had to leave toxic culture of motherhood and womanhood. And on the daily basis, 1,000 times a day, ask myself, how can I? Like, how can I get the support that I need? How can I find a creative solution to feel lighter, to feel more aligned? And I'm sure you hear this all the time or see this. It's like, are the solutions there? Sure. They might be under a rock. It's not going to be like on a silver platter in front of you. Like, you do have to put some energy and effort into it. And then once you have those solutions, you're met with this emotional resistance that if I don't do all of this myself, I'm a bad daughter. I'm a bad mother. Like, I still have those stories that come up inside of me. People are like, how do I get rid of this guilt? And I'm like, do you get rid of the guilt or do you lead from how you want to feel? But there is this like deeper place that you have to go into yourself and say, I am worthy of receiving. I am worthy of receiving support. Even if I have 4 siblings and we need to have very emotionally uncomfortable conversations. And you know what? Maybe the 3 of them aren't on board. So I have to utilize the resources to get the support that I need to support my mother, to support our aging parents. I'm curious how, like, your perspective on that, because there is like a inner growth experience required in order for us to receive the support that's there. But the cultural conversation is, how much of a martyr can I be? If I give to myself, I'm taking away from somebody else. If I ask for help, I have failed in some capacity. And it's usually the quote unquote strong, ambitious, oldest daughter that takes it all on. And that's her identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think like definitely the conditioning of it, and it's that like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is what's been laid out. This pathway has been laid out for me as what is good, right? Like, what is good daughterhood, what is good motherhood, what is good friendship, all of that stuff. I think that is something that is not going to be cured overnight, unfortunately. And I think that the more that we have the conversations about calling it what it is, and calling out why that doesn't help is important. I started a podcast to talk with other women about other mothers. The only qualification to be on the podcast is you have to be a mom, about the things that you do for you alongside motherhood, because that's the part, right? Is like, if you have 5 seats at the table and there's 5 of you, you'll put 4 people in a seat and you'll stand.
Yeah.
And I just like it does not make sense to me, like why we are so forgiving of the load on us, and we are so forgiving of the expectations on us, but we cannot turn around and say, this is a lot, I don't need this. And I think one of the ways of thinking about it is that when you look at this like productivity software and you look at platforms online and stuff, like a lot of the research that went into, okay, well, what is available? There is all of these workplace productivity platforms, Trello, Asana, all of those, right? All of those platforms are not it. What it does is, when you are in a work environment, when you are in a professional context, no one has the expectation that like someone is just going to roll in and take care of everything. Mm-hmm. So if you have a team at work and you guys are all using this platform, the communication has to be at the top, right? Like, I don't expect the person 3 offices down to read my mind. Why would I expect my husband to read my mind? Like, why?
Say that louder. Say that louder. Say it louder. Let's just raise it up a notch.
Exactly. Like, why in a professional setting or a corporate setting are we putting things out to say, here's where I'm at on the project, here are the steps that need to get done, here. But at home, it is, let's just have all the shit roll downhill onto me. Yeah. Like, I don't want that. Thank you very much. And it's all of these phrases like maternal gatekeeping. I'm like, I cannot stand the term maternal gatekeeping, because what it is, it's saying, we handed you all this stuff. Now you have all this stuff. Now see, it's your fault that you have all this stuff. So we can't take this stuff because of this stuff. Mm-hmm. The Dovetail app has no default administrator for the account, because if you have a platform that's set up with a default administrator, that becomes the person, and that becomes the oldest daughter, the big sister, the whoever, that all rolls into their lap. If you don't have an opportunity for that, it's really designed around like a put your money where your mouth is mentality. You want to have equity at home, you want to have equity in care, and you want to have equity in being able to talk about these things. Here's the platform. You interact with it how you interact with it. And so it is not this, there is no maternal gatekeeping. There is no like one person holds all the cards. It is a coffee table where people can put the information and people can get the information that they need. And if they do not, it is not the fault of somebody else's. You're not going to scapegoat someone who will not let things fall through the cracks, because that's quite often the mom. Mm-hmm. Mom's not going to be like, oh, well, I guess I just won't pick them up from school today. Like, you're going to do that. And so for so long, that ends up being, oh, well, I know that I have someone on the 50-yard line or on the end zone. I know that there's always someone behind me protecting the end zone. And I'm saying, like, take a left, like, get out of the way. You let that person run right into the end zone and they can start solving their own problems.
I'm like, I just want to be like, say it louder, say it louder. I think this is genius. And from my work and perspective, it forces you to hold boundaries. It forces you to sit with your own shit of you're doing somebody else's work, strengthening communication. And I'm all about, how do you want to feel? Like, you deserve to be well-resourced. You deserve, like, that is your birthright. And this is the superpower of women, because the shadow of it is burnout. The shadow is the overdoing, overgiving, overmothering, and that takes away from other people. There was something that you said, and I was like, oh, the decision fatigue. So I didn't even know what decision fatigue was, like the term of it. And I don't know how long ago it was, but I'm just like meticulous with, how do I want to feel? How can I buy back time and energy? And it's usually energy, because time is like, I can have time, but if I don't energetically feel good within that time, I have nothing. So I use this journal prompt, wouldn't it be nice if? And so I'll use this with my house, with my team, with in myself, like just dreaming. And most of like when I was doing my team and the house, most of my desires were like decision fatigue related.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm asking myself, how can I create a process, or who do I need to become in order to regain my energy here? And most of the time, it's teaching someone else or communicating to them what I need or what we need, because it's not all about me either. It's like, hey, what do you need to feel successful? Creating a process and doing less better, which allows me or which forces me to sit with my shit.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing less better and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit of the problem here because I'm overdoing. But then once you get that partnership, even when you think that person's incapable, it's not that they're incapable. It's just that you haven't given them the opportunity, the growth opportunity, made them emotionally uncomfortable. I look back at my life and I think people are like, oh my God, you're so amazing. How'd you figure that out? And I'm like, my back was against the wall. I was 18 when I had my first child, single on government assistance, living in my mother's basement. And she was like, all right, here we go. I'm not doing this for you. We got to figure this out together. And I'll support you. I'll let you live here, but you got to figure out how to buy diapers. Let's go. And oh, stage 4 cancer. Let's figure this out. Oh, this. It's like, yeah, you can ask for help. People will teach you, but you got to be the doer, and frick, you got to sit with your own shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the one example that I love giving, because I feel like it is so, it highlights a lot of those things, right? So I have, my husband is a fully functioning adult, right? Like a full human being,
Yeah.
arms and legs, employed, dresses himself, right? Like he is a very capable human. And when I was when I was working in the hospital and I was gone, I was unreachable. And that was it. I left the house at 7:30. I came home at 4:30, figure it out, which is the same thing that happened to me when he was gone, right? Like why, I went back in and there were people there who were like, did you like lay out clothes for your daughter before you left? And I was like, no. I made my lunch and I walked out the door on purpose. I made my lunch and I walked out the door on purpose. And I would not get into that. Like if my kid showed up in I don't know what, I don't care. She's dressed, right? Like if I came home at the end of the day, my responsibility in that day was to pump and to feed myself and to try like hell to drink enough water to be able to do number one.
Yeah.
And that was it. Everything else he can do. He is capable of doing that. And so as she got older and started getting into like the birthday party thing, I would have people all the time that would say to me like, "Oh, your husband's such a good dad because he brought like the kids to the birthday parties or whatever." And I was like, I cannot. I just like this just makes me nauseous. Like people are like, "What a good dad." I'm like, "What a functioning adult." Right?
Yeah,
Like
our
what?
standards are so low. The bar
Kick
is
the bar.
so low.
Mhm.
And it is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Mind blowing. The bar is
Mhm.
so low. And
Yeah.
men are
But
struggling.
well, it's true. And this is the other part too, right? So I'm looking at it from this perspective and then I'm looking at it from his perspective and he's like, I want to go and do these things. Like I want to have this experience. But I'm the one getting the birthday party invitation and I'm the one getting the text messages and all of that stuff. And that also feeds into this. Like this is not just on me. And so within the app, you say, okay, my kid got invited to a birthday party. I have all the information that comes to me. That's great. I can put it in a place and I can share it with him and say, okay, if he grabs a birthday present, then he can check it off the list on there.
Mhm.
I'm not the one who's like, hey, did you remember the birthday present? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And so it's like it's taking the stuff that floats around in your head, the wouldn't it be nice if someone else would go and get the birthday present, and putting it in a place where everyone who needs to be a part of that can see it. So you're creating the opportunity for that person to have access. That's this maternal gatekeeping thing. We don't maternally gatekeep intentionally.
Right.
There's no place for it to live outside of us. So you can't effectively hand off a task. You can't effectively hand off something because there's nowhere to put it. So this is like, let's put it here, so that you don't have your partner saying to you, I'd love to take them, but I don't know where the birthday party is. And then it's a whole thing. It's just so many extra steps that we don't need.
There's, as you're talking about the app, like my physical body is like getting like a deep exhale. And what I'm also seeing is the opportunity to strengthen your relationships. And yes, it takes skill. Like you're going to have life moments in contrast that will force you to reevaluate how you're living or how you're doing things. Like it's always like a beautiful little self check, right? What did you call it? Like the loaf of bread, the breadcrumbs, the breadcrumbs that are leading you back, or the loaf of bread that smacks you in the face.
Right.
And if you're up for the challenge and you're up to making your life feel easier, more aligned, if you don't do it now when your children are younger, like there are seasons in your life that this will come up again and again and again and again. And that's the beauty of growth and learning new skills and getting emotionally uncomfortable. So Ashley, tell us more about, I think it's still in product development, your wait list, right? So
Yes.
Where can people find this, get more information, get in your world, learn more about you?
Yeah, dovetaildesigns.co is the website. Right at the top, there's a little banner you can click on. We are in development, hoping for late January, early February next launch. We had a beta last year. That I say last year, it's like the middle of January. It feels like a million years ago, but anyways, shortly last year, we had a beta, and it was great. A lot of really positive feedback on that. So we're iterating on that feedback. That will come out beginning of the year, and then so that all that information is there, dovetaildesigns.co, and both podcast.com is the website for the podcast that will send you through. You can link to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me. I am on Instagram, and both underscore podcast or Dovetail app, and LinkedIn, Ashley Blackington. I'm the most active on LinkedIn. There's podcast information on Instagram and stuff like that, but I am the most active on LinkedIn. So send me a message if you have questions or ideas or whatever it is. All of the things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is the beauty of these conversations, because I think we're slowly turning the ship and changing this cultural conversation, because we can go after what we truly want, how we want to feel, not have it all in the cliche bullshit way. But if we can think critically and go, how can I, utilizing tools like the ones you're creating, deepening our communication skills, this is where the magic happens. So I just wanted to say thank you, because I know the energy and effort it takes to like create a movement. It is not enjoyable all the time to be like, no, let's change the conversation around this. Let's do something new. So I see you in that. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of helping women feel lighter, more aligned and alive. And not just women, all humans.
Yeah. I mean, I think the having it all is great, but you can't have it all at the same time, and figuring out what all actually means, because my all and your all are going to be worlds apart from each other at different points in our lives.
Yeah.
So.
And my all yesterday and today, very different. And I always say it's like, it's a feeling we're after. It's not the actual thing.
We want peace and calm. That's what we want. That's what all is to me. It's not do I have a million plates spinning? It is, do I feel happy with where I am right now?
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.